system because all nations on the gold standard is not a fixed exchange rate system because all nations on the gold standard use the same currency. They use the same commodity as money. What about paper currency? Banknotes and government-issued notes under the gold standard were not money proper, but as I said, they were money substitutes. And they substituted for gold in exchange as warehouse receipts. So you were trading claims to gold. You didn't need to trade the physical gold. It gave you greater security. It was more convenient to carry around claims to gold. It was just simply a title that expressed the fact that you were the owner of the underlying asset or thing that was referred to. So let's look at some of these money substitutes. Prior to 1920, banks could not only issue checking deposits, but private commercial banks could also issue their own notes. So let's take one from the Farmers and Merchants National Bank of Los Angeles. Notice what it says. It will pay to the bearer on demand $20. The $20 is that gold ounce that will be paid to you if you bring in for redemption that piece of paper. So people recognized it as what it was, and it was clear what it was, just by what was written on the face of the note, that it was a claim to gold. So let's talk about the connection between the gold standard and money and prices. So when in redeeming $20 for a gold ounce, they were not, as a monetarist claim, selling gold. They weren't selling gold to you. They were just fulfilling their contractual obligation of redeeming that claim to gold. There was no sale involved here because you can't sell a claim against what it's claiming. That's just a legal interaction. So in the long run, under a genuine gold standard, the money supply is strictly limited by gold mining, or as we'll see, more strictly by the balance of payments for countries that don't mine gold. You can only increase banknotes and bank deposits to the extent that gold flows into the banks. There is some wiggle room there. They can change their reserve ratio, but for the most part, the money supply increases and contracts with flows of gold. And this is rational. This is embedded in subjective decisions that drive the trade of goods and services. So the result was that since we had a tremendous economic growth, let's say in the U.S. after the Civil War, we went from basically an agrarian nation before the Civil War to the mightiest industrial nation in the world by World War I. There was a tremendous amount of technological improvement, of saving and investment, and the accumulation of new capital and so on, and that caused the supplies of goods and services to increase year after year. The money supply under the gold standard increased extremely slowly, much slower than was the increase in the supply of goods and services, so therefore the natural effect was for prices to fall. And I call this growth deflation. Deflation that results from growth. You know, we were told back in the 1960s and 70s when Keynesian economics was riding high that inflation was always accompanied growth. Growth was inflationary. That's ridiculous. Economists have always recognized that economic growth is, all other things equal, deflationary. But mainstream economists are beginning to recognize that today, and that's not a bad thing. One thing I want to point out is that there's a natural market mechanism to keep prices from falling too much in some sense, even under growth deflation. You don't see it here, but prices began to rise right around the late 1890s, and they rose all the way up until 1913. But that was a natural phenomenon because it resulted from the gold, new discoveries in sources of gold, and also new discoveries in how to extract gold from ore. So we had an increase in gold production from year to year over those years, and that drove prices up again. But that wasn't all simply an accident where we found new sources of gold and so on. When you have a fall in prices, all prices fall, including the capital goods that are used in mining, extracting, and exploring for gold. So gold becomes more valuable. As general prices fall, the value of gold goes up, obviously, because it's the other side of the coin. And as a result, that lowers the cost of producing gold, exploring for gold, increases the profitability of gold mining,